Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Welcome to day 11 of spoiler season for the Siege of the Atlas expansion. Tomorrow's the big day, tomorrow's the day that we're going to have the main live stream reveal. That'll have a lot more information, but today we've got a couple of little teasers that are worth discussing as well. So firstly, we have a few mysterious currency orbs. Not much is known about these. For those of you that aren't super familiar with what the currency orbs look like, the first one is a stylized exalt, the second one a stylized chaos orb, and the third one is a stylized orb of annulment. These have a definite blue versus red, ice versus fire type feel to them. There's a possibility that this could be two of the new supporter packs, something about the Incinerator and the Ravager, who could well be at ends with each other, and a conflict between them could be central to 3.17. That I think we'll get a lot more information on tomorrow, but it's something that is worth keeping in mind. I don't know anything about what these are going to do, although if I was to hazard a guess, they'd be something that might look superficially similar to things like the Conqueror's Exalts from 3.9. Secondly, we have the map device mods. Now, the thing that's probably most interesting about these is that they are called Kirac mods, and Zana has been the person that's given them to you. Now it seems that there's been a little bit of a move on in terms of the NPCs in Path of Exile. Maybe Zana is going to be out. Maybe Zana's going to be the primary adversary. We've all suspected that Zana's been evil for a long time, and she's just been trying to recruit powerful player characters and turn them into monstrous NPCs like Cirrus. So who knows whether that's the case or not, whether that's just me with some crazy tinfoil hat idea, but that is definitely something a lot of people have suspected for a while, and now we're going to go through... now we're going to find out the truth because Kirac is taking over from Zana. But let's just quickly discuss these. So these are an option to augment your existing maps by spending additional Chaos Orbs. They have to be pure Chaos Orbs, and this is what keeps Chaos Orbs as the centerpiece of the Path of Exile economy. Without Chaos Orbs being sunk into the map device, Chaos Orbs just wouldn't have much value in trade. It is the fact that they're continually drained by these map device mods that means that they end up as a stable currency, because they don't really have that much utility in crafting anymore. But anyways, let's have a quick discussion of them. So firstly is the default 8% increased quantity of items. So that will start at 1% and build up to 8% as you complete more and more of the Atlas, at least assuming that the Atlas mods work in a similar way to 3.16. And that's the way that that's what you get when you don't buy a Zana mod. Next is Fortune Favors the Brave. I have never been a fan of Fortune Favors the Brave. You'll know Fortune Favors the Brave picks one of the other mods at random, including ones you've not yet revealed, and adds that to your map. Now that sounds great. The problem is that you can't play to the existing strengths of the map with it. So for instance, let's say that you hit Ambush. If you hit Ambush on a map that has Sextant mods that augment strongboxes, that's fantastic. But if you hit Harbinger on that map instead, the Harbingers are just going to have less utility than hitting Ambush would. And so as a result, although you end up getting the full effect of one of the mods, you don't get one that you can really synergize with the rest of your map. I generally don't use Fortune Favors the Brave except when there is a challenge explicitly to use it. It can give you access to Ritual cheaply, but Ritual's only going to be worth using if you get it on the right maps. So next we have Abysses. Presumably this adds one Abyss to the map. Sometimes in the past I think it has added 2, but usually it's added 1. Broadly speaking, an Abyss is not worth paying 2 Chaos for unless there is specific synergies involved. But if there are specific synergies, and in the 3.16 era of the game, you can use the Maven Sextant mod to add 3 additional Abysses, and you can also augment the map with a Winged Abyss Scarab to get an enormous amount of XP and extra monsters from each Abyss. This is actually a lot stronger than it looks in that situation. You only really want to use it though if there are other effects that are increasing the amount of monsters the Abyss spawns. And so currently that is Glenak Can's passives, but who knows what state the Atlas will be in 3.17. That's Abyss, that's why you might consider using it. Otherwise, it's generally not worth using. One exception though, and that is very, very, very early league. Run Abyss on every tier 16 you do, because the times that you get an Abyssal Depths and you get a monster level 84 Abyssal Depths, because Abyssal Depths will be 1 level higher than the zone they're in. That will drop an item level 86 Stygian Vice, and a Stygian Vice is a really good thing to have early on, especially at item level 86. Next is Domination. So Domination adds a bunch of shrines to the map. This does add a bunch of really super dense packs, but broadly speaking is not worth spending 3 chaos on. Whilst it does add more monsters to the zone, there's just better ways to add monsters to the zone than purchasing Domination, such as some of the later mods here like Harbinger. So broadly speaking, I would say don't use this unless there is a challenge that requires it. Bloodlines is next. Bloodlines will increase the number of magic monsters on the map. Magic monsters have disproportionately more XP and loot than they should have, and additionally, they also have the chance to drop +1 tier maps. So if you're in a tier 13 map, Bloodlines can help you get more tier 14 maps. Bloodlines' main utility is very, very, very early league. It's really useful when you're trying to build a map pool. It is especially useful for this purpose in solo self-found, where you can't just go and trade with other players to pick up maps. A lot of the divination cards that grab maps are basically a very limited use because you won't compile a set of the same one. You'll get like a little piece from this one, a little piece from this one. In trade, that's fine. You can get a map out of them. In SSF, you can't. So Bloodlines is really an SSF option now. There was a time in Path of Exile's history where Bloodlines was great as a moneymaker. That was back when maps were a lot scarcer than they are now, and so you could make a lot of currency by just running Bloodlines. You know, you would buy tier 13, 14 maps from other players, you would apply Bloodlines to them, and then you would run them, and you would get a heap of maps of 1 tier higher. You'd turn around and sell them. That still applies today. The thing is that you're just not making enough currency out of those map sales, and the maps sell slower than they used to. Ambush is next. Ambush will add multiple strongboxes onto the map. This is only worth doing if strongboxes are inherently better in that map for some reason, such as Atlas passives at the moment, or whatever exists in 3.17. It does add a lot of monsters sometimes, and it can be good. Usually if it's worth using Ambush from Zana, it's also worth applying Abyss Scarabs, and that combination can be really, really strong in conjunction with certain sextant roles at the moment. Who knows what form sextants will exist in, if any, in 3.17. So maybe there'll be other things you'll want to do, but Ambush is certainly something that's just worth keeping in mind that it's an option. You don't use it by default, but it's something to just remember is there. Okay, now we get to the big 3. So these 3 are going to be ones that are going to take a lot longer to unlock. You're going to probably need to do 2/3 of the Atlas before you get access to Harbinger, 3/4 before you get access to Beyond, and 80% before you get access to Ritual, or something like that. So Harbinger will add usually 2 Harbingers to the map. This almost always pays for itself over the long term because it will dribble out Exalted Orb Shards. Exalted Orb Shards are worth enough that even though you won't get one every map that you run the Harbinger mod, over time you will get a bunch of them. This will also put somewhat of a cap on how much Exalted Orbs and Ancient Orbs can get to be worth. Although, let's just hold off on that for Ancient Orbs for a little while because we don't know what the market on those is going to look like next league. With things like if there's any new chase uniques, or if people start chasing Mage Blood more aggressively, maybe that will be more of an impact on Ancient Orb prices than Harbinger is. But ultimately, Harbinger will flood the league with lots of Exalted Shards, which will help crafters that are using meta mods. Harbinger is also really useful in solo self-found and is probably the best use of your Chaos Orbs there. Again, because it will give you access to Exalted Orbs, and Exalted Orbs will then be used to pay for bench crafts in conjunction with harvest crafts in order to make some of the most ridiculous rare items you will be able to get in the game. Beyond is next. Beyond is the Uber Juicer option. Beyond you would never consider using unless your character is far more powerful in the map that you're going into. So Beyond really comes on into its own when you've got a character that can absolutely dominate tier 16 maps. Then you go back and you run those same maps with Beyond, and you will have a tremendously increased amount of monsters in there. With Beyond, every time you kill a pack of monsters, you will get some number of additional spawns that appear, and some of those will be the Beyond bosses. Beyond bosses are terrifyingly dangerous when you are not at a point that you just outgear the content you're in, but when you do outgear the content you're in, Beyond bosses will pretty much instantly melt as well, and that will just end up raining a lot of extra loot as a result. Beyond is really powerful once you reach that point. And ultimately, at 5 Chaos Orbs each, In Trade League, this will be probably the most used of all of the options, but it will not be used by many players. There'll be a small number of players that will be trading all of their currency into Chaos Orbs in order to just keep spamming Beyond on maps, and they'll be making a lot of currency out of doing that. Lastly, we have Ritual. So Ritual's 13 Chaos a go. That's not an insignificant cost, and as a result, you need a plan to get currency back. Otherwise, you're going to end up getting burnt. The reason that Ritual has been popular in the past is because when you get rituals on a map, you can get blood-filled vessels from them. When you've got a whole bunch of blood-filled vessels, a bunch of players have done some testing where they've put 4 of them in with maps, and it seems to me, just from reviewing a bunch of those test results, sample size is a little bit small here, but it seems like approximately every quad tab full of blood-filled vessels you have, if you're running these four ritual vessels, you will typically get 1 raw mirror of Kalandra per quad tab of those you go through. So based on that, the Ritual is probably going to be the single primary source of Mirror of Kalandra drops in the entirety of the league. And that will be because of a 2-step process where one group of players apply Zana's ritual mod, Kirac's ritual mod now, to a map and compile the ritual vessels and then apply those to, or then sort of stack those up, fill them up, stack them up, and then sell them in bulk to a second group of players who then have a huge bankroll behind them, because you can lose a lot of currency doing this if you get unlucky, who then run a whole bunch of maps with 4 ritual vessels in them. Anyway, that's all I got on this. May Evolves have interesting results, and I will see you around. Tomorrow is the big news day. That's the day that we're going to find out everything about the new expansion. And so make sure that you sort of set an alarm if, like me, it's going to be at 6 o'clock your time. And I'll be restreaming it with commentary over on Twitch. Or if you don't want the commentary, or if you want to hold off on the commentary, you just watch the original stream from GGG, and then you can have a look at summaries from people like me later. All right, thanks for your time.